today on the show we have Jennifer Lucarelli. Welcome, Jennifer, to the show.
Thank you.
Jennifer is currently the editor of Bay State Parent magazine. She's also been the editor for the Shrewsbury Patch, worked for the Telegram and Gazette in Worcester, and while at home with her kids, she freelanced for 2 journals, including the Bay State Parent, as well as worked as the editor and moderator for massmoms.com. Jennifer likes photography, knitting, and scrapbooking in her spare time. Jennifer, are you one of those people who, while watching TV, knits an entire sweater?
I wish I could say that I've actually knit an entire sweater. I've started many of them, but I do have a knitting project usually going. Usually it's a scarf or the beginning of an Afghan, and I've made a lot of projects for family and friends, and we have some for my kids as well. So
I have an aunt who does this. So by the end of the 11 o'clock news, she'll have an arm for a sweater ready to go. So
a sweater to me is very impressive.
But one arm will be longer than the other.
Of course.
So I'm sure you're much better.
I've even tried knitting socks, which is another challenge, but I have a lot of projects started, and some finished, but a lot of them started.
Awesome.
So.
We never have to worry about Christmas clothes in your house, or hats or sweaters.
No.
That's awesome. That's a very useful skill. So I understand that your first job preference was to be a rock star.
Well, yes.
But this came in as a close second.
Yes, this was a close second. When I was a kid, I had a Barbie microphone, and I used to sing along to everything on the radio at the time. There was a lot of radio seemed to be more prevalent in my life, and I never understood why I never made it on the stage. Now, I never really performed in front of other people, but had hoped to be a rock star.
Well,
in my mind.
There's time yet.
Well, I'm very good in the shower and in the car, so those are my big audiences right now.
That's awesome. And Jennifer, where did you grow up?
I actually grew up in Orange, Connecticut. It's outside of New Haven. I'm actually originally from New York City, but my family moved to Connecticut when I was about 3 years old, so I spent my formative years growing up in Connecticut.
Oh, interesting. So when you were in Orange, did you know that one day you would be where you are today and doing what you do?
I actually didn't. I did a lot of writing when I was in high school and junior high. I wrote a lot of poems. I did a lot of reading. I loved reading as a child. And it wasn't really until I got to college in Worcester where I really started to try my hand at it, thanks to a professor who said to me, "What do you want to do with your life?" And it was my sophomore year, and I thought maybe psychology, maybe journalism, and I started writing for the college newspaper, and then I kind of saw my name in lights, if you will, like a rock star, but in print, and it just got me very excited to do writing, and what I like most about the writing that I do is I get to meet so many people in my day-to-day life, and so I get to interview a lot of interesting people, and that's really the part of the job that I think I love the most.
Right, and so did you have teachers in high school who really encouraged you and who said a lot of nice things about your writing, encouraged you to take classes?
I had some English professors that really meant a lot to me, but in high school there was one when I was a senior that we did a lot of writing, which really helped me focus in on my skills, but really I blossomed when I got to college, and I really took, there wasn't a journalism degree at Assumption College, so I had to take a communications degree, and I did a double major, and I did everything writing I could find, and it was so much fun, and it came so much easier to me writing papers, writing about the books I was reading, but then when I started writing articles and really meeting people, I really started learning that everybody has a story to tell, and when I get to tell that story, that's what I love the most. So.
And while in college, did you work as a journalist or get to cover stories?
I actually did 2 internships. I worked at the Worcester Business Journal, and I actually went into the job saying I know about writing, but I know nothing about business, and they gave me the internship. And it was a great experience. I got to learn a lot about Worcester and business people and leaders. And then I also did an internship for television journalism at Channel 3 in Worcester at the time. So I got to go out on the scene and really meet a great team of people to work with.
And what did your parents want you to do while you were growing up?
Well, a lot of the time they said to us, to me and my brother, you could be anything that you wanted to be. They never really wanted to put any restrictions on what we could be, which was fantastic to grow up with. But actually, my father always used to say to me, I really could see you being a lawyer. You'd be a great lawyer. And he used to say that to my brother as well. And when I learned in college that there was a lot more reading and a lot of years of schooling, that wasn't something that I was interested in. But actually, in my capacity as a reporter at the Worcester Telegram and Gazette, and other publications. I've actually had to go to court a few times, and I've actually seen the process. So
And I'm sure you've had a lot of reading to do anyway.
yes,
Right.
there's still a lot of reading and writing to do, but I think being a lawyer takes such dedication and a lot of years of schooling, and with journalism, I get to have my hand in a lot of different aspects of society.
That's so interesting. And so when you decided to major in communications and journalism, did your parents say, "Yay, that's fabulous, we love it"?
I would love to say yes. I got a lot of questions like, what does that mean? What are you
Right.
going to be doing? And I really had to fight my parents, well, not my parents, they were supportive of me, but I had to fight them to say, this is what I love, and I really think there's a career. And actually, I wrote a paper when I was a senior at Assumption about the death of journalism and how, because of the computers, journalism was going to die. And it's almost 20 years later, and I still have had a great career and have been able to. Journalism is just changing its medium. It's not going away. But my parents didn't know. They've read newspapers every day, but they didn't really understand the process behind it. So I had to really teach them about it, and now they're very supportive of that.
And what were your parents' profession?
My father was in insurance. He was a chief underwriter, and my mom actually was a stay-at-home mom when I was a kid. And as my brother and I graduated from college and graduate school, she actually got her degree in library science. So now she works as an assistant librarian or a librarian who does interlibrary loans. So she actually went back to get her degree in college that she never got. So
that's awesome.
Yes.
That's great that she did that.
So we were very proud of her that she did
Yeah.
that.
And your brother, did he become a lawyer?
No, he did not become a lawyer. He actually worked on Wall Street for a few years, and it was a business and entrepreneur, and that's what he does now. So,
Ah, interesting.
but no lawyers.
No lawyers. Tell me what is, I know you've said that you love to work with people and interview people.
Yes.
Would you consider that to be the best part of your job?
I think that over the years, that's been the best part of my job. I think that every job that I do there's some, like in the last few years, especially being at Shrewsbury Patch, which was an online newspaper, that taught me so much about social media, the web, getting your information out in a different medium. And now that I'm an editor, I still get to do some interviewing of people, but I get to work with writers who are fabulous, as well as a staff that really puts together such a great publication. So that's been around for 17 years. So I think that's one aspect of my job that I do miss a little bit of doing it every day, but I get to still do it I do at least 1 or 2 stories a month that I get to write, so I still get to interview people. So that's still what drives me.
And for the group, do you assign stories, or does your staff come up with their own ideas?
We actually come up as a team with story ideas. There's a great creative director that I work with who's been at the magazine for 17 years, so she's really has a really good idea of what we like to put forward in the magazine. So we work together to come up with story ideas. Sometimes my freelance staff will come up with ideas, but most of the time it does come from us and me for the story ideas. So that's a new aspect of the job that I get more control over, which is great.
And how big is the group for the staff, like for the team that you have there?
The freelance, well, right now we work with a creative director. We have a great sales team that is about 4 or 5 people. We have a graphic designer that works with us as well. And then I have freelance writers that are not full-time, but they are about 15 of them that rotate through and who writes at different times. And what's fantastic about Bay State Parent is a lot of the writers are moms themselves or dads, so they actually understand what our readers are looking for. So it's really great to have that kind of pool of people to work with.
So tell us some of the more colorful stories that are experiences that you've had through your years of experience in this field.
Well, there's been some touching stories that have happened, and very sad stories that we've had to be a part of. One of the stories when I was at the Telegram and Gazette was the summer that Molly Bish was found, and she was a girl that went missing in Warren, and I had never covered the story, but then they had found her remains, and so that was very tough on me to write, not only as a reporter, but I was actually pregnant with my first son at the time too, and so it was a very difficult time. But the family was so amazing to work with. They stayed in the limelight, and it was really amazing to meet Maggie Bish and John Bish and their family, and really they understood that the media was there to help and to really get the word out. And that was really one of the first times that I had seen what good media can do, and especially in the light of such a negative story. But to see that if you embrace the attention, things can happen and mysteries can be solved, and hopefully they'll find out what happened to her eventually. But there's been other stories. There's been, court cases that I've followed, and there was one court case that I covered when I was at the Telegram and Gazette of a family that had child abuse going on, and watching the prosecutor's office and all the state and local agencies come together and really help the children. That was, and when I looked at that story, it was so sad to watch what was going on, but to see all the first responders and everybody come together and really work to fix that family and help them in any way that they could. That was really another eye-opener. And that's something I took from that, is that when I do stories, even at Bay State Parent and anywhere that I am, I try to look at how can I advance this in a positive way? Where's there a positive angle to the story that we can focus on? So in light of even the negativity, that's what I like to focus on.
That's so nice. That's refreshing, because there are a lot of papers who sort of try to, they want to report news as news, but then regardless, there's always an angle to it. And so when other people read the article, some people feel that it's negative, and other people feel that, well, they're just reporting. But that's nice that you pay attention to that focus of.
Well, and I think in journalism in general, I mean, there's such a bottom line that so many people are focused on, and I mean, we are too, but I look at, like we did a series of stories in October on breast cancer awareness, and I kept saying to my creative director, and we both were saying, I want to make this positive. I want to give people hope. I want to show, it's such a sad stories to be covering, but where's the hope in this, and where are the people that are positive? And I think that's really what gets you through as a reporter and as an editor, not to get so bogged down in the day-to-day negativity, because it's out there, and and you have to cover some of it. I mean, especially with like the Boston Marathon bombings that happened, there's so much negativity there, but there's also so many bright spots of people helping, and I think that moving forward, that's what we want to do, is look at something, but and we're writing to parents who are trying to raise children, and as a mom, I look at that too, and I look at, how can we make it better? Is there something I can do to make it better? And whatever I put out there, I try to look at that when I'm writing a story to make it better, not just, negative.
Right.
So.
And did you? What is the area that Bay State covers? Like, do you cover stories all the way up to New Hampshire, or is it?
We cover Central Mass and Eastern Mass. Actually, we have plans to expand it even further west if we can. So we're looking to grow as well. But it's mostly now Central and Eastern Massachusetts.
Oh, awesome!
But all the way to the borders.
And as editor, what are your responsibilities? Are you, as part of your responsibilities? I know you supervise the staff of writers. And the creative directors and the freelance writers, and are you also responsible for circulation?
Well, we are responsible for circulation. We all kind of pitch in as a team, and that's really what I like best about Bay State Parent, is that there's not one person who's in charge of everybody. We all everybody's such a seasoned staff that we all work so well together, and actually circulation is definitely something that we work on, and we try to grow, and we work with advertisers. But what I found at Bay State Parent, which is different than most other publications, is that there's no wall between sales, there's no wall between circulation, there's no wall between editorial. So it's not like I just do my editorial job and that's it.
And then you don't communicate with anybody else. Right?
There's so much communication back and forth, and there's such a great team that works there. So it's really a different model that I think many publications really need to be looking at. Yeah,
which is great, which is wonderful to have. So it's nice to have that team spirit, and everyone's talking to everyone, so everyone knows what each other is about to do or responsible for.
Right.
So it cuts down on the confusion and repetition as well.
Exactly.
I was wondering, and also I know that you're a mom and you have 2 boys, and I was wondering, has having kids changed the way you write?
I think that it's changed the way I write, but it's also changed my outlook on my career. I think it's been kind of, I think it's been something that I was surprised at. I thought I would have kids and my career would kind of continue, and I actually chose to stay home with them for about 7 years.
And while you were freelancing,
while I was freelancing and juggling
being the editor
everything.
of another online magazine.
Exactly. So I was juggling a lot, but for the last 2 years, I've actually moved closer to being more full time, and it's definitely a juggle. But what I love about what I do is that I have flexibility to be home with them when I need to be home with them, but also it has changed my writing in that I want them to be proud of what I'm doing. And I think that for a lot of the time I had been focusing on daily journalism, and you cover everything, soup to nuts of everything in a community, good, bad, and ugly. And I think I've wanted to make more choices of what I have to cover or what I want to cover because it makes me sad. I'm more emotional as a person than I was before I had children. And I think covering deaths and murders and national things that happen, it's harder on me to cover that than it was before. Before I just kept doing it, and I never really stopped.
Right.
So
do you feel like you had a wall somewhere between you and that before, whereas now after children, it sort of affects you more closely?
It definitely does.
Because you've become more anxious.
Well, exactly.
Right, as a parent.
I think I've become more. I definitely have more anxiety as a parent, but also, I want to shield them from what happens in the world if it's negative. And then I want to shield myself. And I think as my career has progressed, I've always wanted to start choosing more what I'm covering and what I'd like to do. And I think that's why at Bay State Parent, having the control over what we cover, it really does help. And having it be more of a 9 to 5 job and not a 24/7 journalism job has helped a lot to keep my work-life balance.
And so which is a nice segue into my next question, which is that you're the type of woman who really straddles both worlds of having a full-time career as well as having a family. So I was going to ask you, what advice would you give, if any, or tips for women coming back into the workforce after being a mother, after being moms, or also Wellesley High School kids who are looking into getting into the workforce for the first time and thinking about all these kinds of things of what are they going to do for career and what if they get a family and things of that nature?
I think when I was younger, before I had kids and even before I was married, I had an idea that I wanted to get my career to a certain point before I had kids so that I could always go back to my career. And actually, I have a very supportive husband who wanted me to go back to work even before I was ready to. So he was keeping me in the business of freelancing, which is great, especially in journalism where you can work part-time.
Right.
I think that as a mom, I think we all need that break from the day-to-day mundane of parenting. And I think one thing that I tried not to lose over the 6 or 7 years that I was really home full-time was I didn't want to lose my career in that. I wanted to keep something going. And I think for moms and young women who are getting into the workforce, don't think that you can't do it. First of all, you can have everything. You can have a family, you can have a career, you can have children, you can really fit it in. It may not look pretty every day, but it's fit in, But I think having a supportive spouse is huge. My husband is an amazing support to me. And he's so engaged in the kids and involved in everything that they do. But also, I waited, while the kids were young, I was home with them. And I think I waited it out to find a job that really could fit my family in. And I think I didn't know that when I was younger. I would think, well, I'll just go back to work when they go back to school. And this year, my youngest went to full day kindergarten, so it worked out. But there's still sick days and juggling and all sorts of stuff that happens. And but I think if I was to give anybody advice, just not to give up and not to, just don't limit yourself. The sky is the limit for things, and you can really have it all and make it work.
And that's an interesting point you make. A number of points that you make, and I hear that from a lot of moms. One of the hardest things for them is when they're at work and your child's teacher calls and says, "Can you come pick your kid up because they're throwing up everywhere and they really need to go home now." And that's the hardest thing, because then you have to have some kind of backup plan for someone to come pick them up and be with them while you finish your workday.
Exactly.
And that's daunting.
Well, and what's nice about where I work is I work with mostly women and also mostly moms. So we all have had those days. So I think working in a business where journalism is not usually mostly women, but in my office it is mostly women, and actually having the understanding and the ability now in this day and age to work from home, which has never been more prevalent. So having the flexibility to bring my work home and do it, once the kid is in bed, and it helps.
Right. So if someone works for you and they have to take off in the middle of the day and they say, "Oh, my child is sick, I've got to go pick them up, but I'll take the work home and I'll finish it." As the editor, you're okay with that?
Yes, definitely. Unless it's production week and we're on deadline. But if we're not on deadline, we do have a lot of flexibility. A lot of people.
That's fantastic.
And a lot of people do work from home some days and make it work for them.
And so tell me, what are your favorite books? What are your favorite books that you've read that you really loved, that have made a big impact on you? And then what's on your reading list right now?
Let's see. That's a tough question.
It's a two-part question.
It's a two-part question. Let's see. I recently, and I hate to say this as an English major, so please take this with a grain of salt.
It's all good.
But I recently read the Hunger Game books. And in recent years, I've been in this book club that we try a lot of different books on, and we read a lot of variety of stuff. Some books I've hated, some books I've liked. But I really think the most recent book that I think I've read that has really touched me is really The Hunger Games. I thought that it was such a different look at society, but also of a woman who is coming of age and really taking on a leadership role. So I think that's a book that stuck with me. I read it a few years ago, but it's really something that, especially with the movies coming out, I'm dying to see all of them. And on my list, actually, it's funny, I was thinking about this morning. With The Great Gatsby coming out, I realized I'd never read The Great Gatsby. Right. So I think that would be a book that's on my list. But when I was in college, I did a lot more reading because I was an English major. So I've read a lot of James Joyce, a lot of classics, things like that have really challenged me as a reader. And so I tend to, when a New York Times bestseller comes out, I tend to shy away from it, like, ooh, should I really be reading that, or should I be reading something more classical? But I'm in this bi-monthly book club that it keeps me reading a lot of different stuff, so it's good.
So what's the next book that they have you reading in the book club?
There's a book I just downloaded on my Kindle, and I don't remember the name of it. Is that awful?
Well, it's because you haven't read it yet.
Well, but also, one thing that I like to do, and I used to have a longer time in the car when my kids were younger. I was always carting them back and forth. Right. But I used to like to listen to books on tape.
Right.
And that's how I read, like, the Harry Potter books, because I get intimidated by really thick books. Yeah. So
it's too much pressure when you have to look at 10,000 pages, right?
Exactly.
I feel like that's a homework.
Exactly.
To do.
So I do like to listen to books on tape. I do have a Kindle now, which it's good to read, but with the schedules that we keep with working and everything, I'm not as good at reading as often as I'd like to.
It's kind of hard to knit, watch TV, and read a book
and watch the kids at the same time. I mean, there's a lot going on.
Yes, there's that as well. So I'm going to ask you a last question here today, which is that this year is the 50th anniversary of the women's movement. And I was going to ask you, how do you feel about that, and where do you think millennial women are today?
Wow,
50 years after.
I think that it's so funny because I go through a lot of, I go back and forth on the women's movement. I think that as a woman, I'm so proud of what they achieved for us, where we have the right to vote, where we're able to go back into the workforce. They've done a lot of positive things. But I look at the traditions that we have as and being a wife and a mother, and even, the little things like a man opening a door for you, like things like that. I think we've kind of gone away from, because I think think women want to do everything themselves. And I think as a mom and as a wife, I've had to learn that I can't do everything myself. And I think there was, in the 60s and the 70s, I think women were fighting for rights, but they were also fighting for having choices and being able to choose a career, being able to choose, if I don't want to get married, that's okay. If I want to get married, that's okay too. But I do flip-flop back and forth, and I think women of the new millennium, I think we struggle with what our identity is and what we want to achieve. And I think it's so individual for women. And I think there's women that are stay-at-home moms, that are stay-at-home wives, that are fantastic. They care for their family. those are jobs that are well, one, they're not paid, but they're so not respected.
They're valuable. They're valuable contributions.
But they're huge. And I look at my own mom. She only went back to work when we were in high school. And that was a huge value to us as children, having her home every single day after school, having her be there, having her do things. So I just look at the Millennium Woman. I think the sky's the limit for us. But I do think as a mom and as a wife and as a woman, there's just, you have to know what you want. You have to be independent. You have to be an individual, and I think there's a lot of options, and the options were never there before. So I'm so blessed to have had women in the past fight for those things. But I also think that every woman should make their own choice, and I don't think I should choose for anybody else and say you should work or you shouldn't work. Everybody has to have their own choice, and finding the support system around you that can afford you those things, that's what's important. So
awesome. That's great. Good answer. I like it. I was just thinking while you were speaking of, while you were talking about the choices, I was remembering a set of books when I was a kid. I grew up overseas, and I remember having this American book that laid out choices for women. So when you grow up, you can be a librarian, and you can be a nurse, or you can be a mom, you can be a secretary. And so I had at least 5 choices or 6 choices. I can't remember the others in this book. But my friend in my elementary school was South Korean, and she had a book, and there were only 2 choices in that book. So it was really interesting to me that it just depends which area you're from and where those books were printed, where the number of pages depends on the culture of how many choices you could have as a woman. And then here we are today, and it seems so interesting just to think about that juxtaposition of things. So the 50th year anniversary, certainly we have a lot more choices today than we ever did before.
Exactly. And it'll be so interesting to see in the next 50 years what more choices will be available. I mean, the sky's the limit, and it's amazing to be a woman in this day and age.
When we have a female president in the White House.
Soon.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you today. We'll have to have you come back on the show and do a follow-up.
That'd be great. I'd love that.
And get to know what's the latest with the Bay State.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you.